It's an honor to be here today. My name is Andy Chan. I'm the Vice President for Personal and Career Development at Wake Forest University. I've become a good friend of Phil Gardner's over the years, and we have, I think, a kindred spirit in terms of how we think about the development of students. One of the things that I think why I'm on this panel is that I represent, in some ways, higher education, and in particular, higher education in the liberal arts. I happen to report to the president of Wake Forest University, and 5 years ago he asked me to come from Stanford, where I ran the Career Management Center at Stanford Business School, to find a way to actually create something at Wake Forest that would make personal and career development a mission-critical part of the student experience. And not just in the college, so we have a liberal arts college and undergraduate business school, but also with all the graduate programs. So we're trying to figure out how to do it university-wide for a school that has about 5,000 undergrads and about 3,000 graduate students. Before I go on, actually, I'd be curious, how many people here in the room are higher ed administrators? Raise your hand. A lot of people. How many of you are actually higher ed specifically in the career or professional development function? Raise your hand. Great. And how many people in higher ed are faculty? Great. So as you can see, we have a lot of higher ed people here. And you want to know why? It's because they're feeling, and we're feeling, a lot of pressure. And that pressure is this, is that we're under fire every single day for justifying the value of higher education. And what's happening is that the media and the government and our politicians are actually trying to reduce it down to what, given your education, is the first job that you got out of school and how much did you get paid. And that ROI will show you how good your education really is. And we all know here in this room that's a joke. But if we don't say something and do something about it, then we're going to actually get it handed to us. And that's why I think we're here, is that actually the T-Summit and the concept of the T-shaped professional is one way for us to get there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we might think about this. First and foremost, if you haven't seen this, I actually have a TEDx talk. The talk is called Career Services Must Die. And the idea behind it is not that career services as a profession must die. It's actually the phrase and the brand, career services. Because if you think about it, we are in the career education business. We're in the career development business. We're helping to grow people to become professionals. We're not in there to serve them and do whatever they want because they need something. We're here to help them learn and connect and grow. That is about development. So I actually really try to push that. Second thing is that if you think about the people who are in the career development function, they're the only people in the entire school who know all the needs of all the students and actually of all the employers. So we can actually fragment everyone down to little pieces, but you realize actually the career development professionals are the ones who know everyone. So I'd like to advocate that they should be at the table when this discussion is happening. There's so many schools today who the administrators are either saying, figure this out, but the career services people can just stay on the side, or they're saying to the career services office, you figured this out, and everyone else will keep doing about their own business and blaming the career office for all the problems about students' employment issues. Everyone has to own it. And here's how I think about this, is that the university is a network. And this network has never been fully activated. The career office has the ability to be the partner that can activate this entire network. In the red are all the people internal to the university. In the gold are all the people who are external to the university. There are very few universities that actually tap into every single one of those groups, where they develop partnerships with every single one of those groups to educate them, inform them, explain to them how and where students go and how they can be a partner in all this. The way I like to describe it is like this. Just like the way we think of an Intel chip inside a computer, we don't know actually what the brand is, the make is, but they are behind the scenes, and without it, it wouldn't work. I think if we thought about our career offices as having that capability, where sometimes they're actually working directly with students, but a lot of times they're actually behind the scenes. They're actually helping faculty to be better about advising students. They're actually providing them with data. They're actually using technology tools. We're actually using things like LinkedIn to actually make this network really real. If we get this whole system and every single university activated, this can work. We can't think about it as being a top-down, one group does all the work kind of model, because there's too many students and there are too many constituents. We all have to own this. So a data point that I like to share is this, is that we know that researchers say that in this next generation of students that are in school right now, they will have anywhere from 20 to 30 jobs in their lifetime. If they have that many jobs, this idea of their first job being the measure of value doesn't make any sense. But we do have to think about what are the right kind of objectives. So it is important to say at the center of this, a desirable post-graduation outcome, graduate school, a job, is important. But I think we all have to recognize, and we educate students about this, is that your first job is not your last job, and there's a very good chance that the first job, you're not going to love it. Not many of us here remember our first job as being our dream job, and we have to tell students that, because as long as we promise them, got to find that perfect job, that first job is you gotta follow your passions, do what you love, they're going to actually sit on the sidelines till they find that job, and they might actually sit on the sidelines for a long time. But we have to think about them in different kinds of ways. I like to actually put these objectives up there when we think about where students should be headed. One is, do they have a clear sense of where they're going? And it doesn't have to be a specific job. It could be in a direction. It could be, I want to learn how to be a good engineer. I want to learn how to be a good leader. I want to learn how to actually practice design thinking. Whatever it might be, they're learning and they're growing. Second, what are the job search and professional competencies that they actually have to know? If you think about our students today, they have to become professional job searchers because they're going to have so many jobs. If we actually don't teach them how to do this, they are not going to figure it out. They'll read, I think they'll keep the self-help book industry in business, but they won't have really learned it. Third, was already mentioned today, connections. We have to go beyond the social media to teach students how to actually have real personal connections with people, both personal and professional, and the value of that. We all know in our own careers, most of the times when we think about why we ended up where we did, it's because someone cared about us. Students have to learn that because our world is pushing them to actually put walls up between people. The amount of advice and wisdom they're willing to take from older people is going down and down and down because they think they can get it by typing it into Google or just posting a question up on Facebook. Finally, to have all these things, to have a sense of self-confidence of navigating this very uncertain future, students are scared. They are in fear. If we're not actually giving them these kinds of things, they're going to walk out and they're going to think, what did my school do? They didn't help me. That's a big part of the value. So one other data point that I think is important is this. In The Economist magazine in January, there's a picture of a magazine where on the cover, a tornado blowing through an office. I highly recommend you read the article. 2 Oxford researchers basically project that in the next 2 decades, 47% of today's jobs will be eliminated by technology. Phil sent me an article before I came that actually said there's other researchers say that like 90% of today's jobs are going to be eliminated by technology. The reality is that over the next 2 decades, there's going to be a lot of churn. And so our students need to be prepared for that. What I think is one of our issues here is that we actually haven't really gotten really clear and specific about what specifically are the competencies we want students to learn. And I use the word competencies because we know that competencies are about knowledge, skills, and abilities. And I like to add one other thing, like a radio station, KSAM, the last one is mindset or attitudes, just like was stated a second ago, is that people actually have to be prepared for what they're headed into. It can't just be about, I just need to know skills. It's a lot more than that. So from a career perspective, here's what I think about is where do we want people to end up? First is that we need people to become career self-reliant and career adaptable. We've heard these phrases actually over the last 2 decades and talked about it, and we think it's great for people to find a way to actually get there, but we don't really teach on how to do it. At the foundation of this is that people need to know themselves and they need to develop a sense of identity. In the conversation last night, where we were talking about everyone needs to have a sense of their own true purpose, where do they find meaning, what do they value, what do they believe, that's all about what identity is about. And actually students yearn to discuss this, but what happens, and there's actually research on this, is that if you don't discuss this with students in their first 2 years at college, they'll assume that actually there's not supposed to be discussion. They'll have chosen a major, and they'll just take it and they'll put it off the table. Because they'll think that the choice of major was actually self-identity. That's actually what I needed to decide when I came to college, because no one before that actually spent any time talking to me about how do I think about what's important to me in life. So like in our career classes that we teach at Wake Forest, we actually have them read Man's Search for Meaning and Authentic Happiness. Like we're trying to get students to think more deeply about what is life about, not I have to get a job or I have to choose a major. Because once you get locked into that, you think that's actually the decision point. The first set of competencies that I think no one ever talks about is this, is that these competencies are all a set of job search related competencies that will help you make sure that you are employable for the rest of your life. If students are not taught these competencies in a very formalized fashion where they actually get credit for it, it is all on an exception basis. It's neat, actually here in this room, there are a few people who actually work at schools where they've decided to actually make career courses part of the credit-based process. So I was talking to folks at University of Florida, George Mason, Wake Forest. I know that Stanford has a few classes like that. Some of you else might have that. It is so important if we can find a way to do this and at scale. Because otherwise, what happens is what has always happened. If any of you ask friends of yours who went to your alma mater, how many of you use a career office? Maybe 10% of the students. Do you really know, actually, even though those 10% who use it, do you know how to really get a job in the 21st century? Most of them say, I have no idea. So it's good for us because we can write books about it and sell books, but that's actually not teaching the students what they need to know. The second level thing is that students need to actually develop these higher level professional skills, ranging from innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership, mentoring relationship skills, and as was mentioned last night, analytics and technical literacy. These are all things that we have to do a better job of thinking, what are we shooting for? How are we going to measure it? So today, I'm glad we're here because we're beginning this conversation. And I invite any of you who are interested in thinking about how do we define it, how do we measure it, and want to go on that journey, we're getting started. Thanks a lot.